Welcome back to Shutter Talk. I'm Z Wade, the Z Wade, and Z Wade Photo. We're going to do the same thing that we've already done. Remember this? Yeah. Why am I doing it in two videos? Well, the other one got pretty long, and I'm trying to save you guys on ads. You're welcome. And this one is different enough. We're going to be doing lenses that I currently own at the making of this video. And so these are actually, these qualify for over my dead body category, which is worth 2 points in and of itself. That means unless these things would be replaced with newer versions, I wouldn't sell these over my dead body, okay? And I may fight somebody to the death if they were trying to steal them. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first category is the 14 to 24 f2.8s. At the making of this video, it's $24.99.95. There's been a price increase. And so price versus performance, although I feel like it's worth the $22.96 or whatever I paid for it. $2,500 is pushing it. I want to give it a 2. Price versus construction, I'm going to give it a 3. It's lightweight, but it feels solid. And there's some really nice features in it, such as the square filter insert in the back and all the different filter options that you do get with this lens. And the fact that it's internal zoom, you can't beat that. I love internal zooms. So versatility, we're going to give it a 3. It's very versatile. It's a constant f2.8, and the 14 to 24, I mean, that's your standard wide angle zoom, but that versatility is really, really nice. Character, we're going to give this a 1. There's no particularly screaming character about it. It's rather flat, just like most of the other Z lenses. Okay. Sharpness, I've got to give it a 3. I mean, corner to corner. I don't know why I had to think about that. And so let's give it an average. We have 3 plus 3 plus 1 is 7, and 7 divided by 3 is 2.33. 2.33. Over my dead body, it does not get a point for that because I would sell this lens if I got to a point where I wasn't using it and replace it with like a 20mm prime or something. The DX 16 to 50mm f3.563. So I got this for the ZFC just in case I ever wanted to sell the ZFC, which I'm actually going to do. I still currently have it. I'm just tired of crop sensors, so I'm just going to go ahead and give it a 0 over my dead body because it's definitely going. Now, price versus performance, I'm going to give it a 2 because I feel like it's appropriately priced. It's not too expensive. It's not too undervalued or anything like that. It's just right in the middle of the road. Price versus construction, I'm going to give it a 1. That lens feels like shit. It feels like the cheapest plastic ever. Versatility, I guess I'm going to give it a 2. It's a zoom 16 to 50, which is like a nice range, but the 3563 variable aperture is going to knock it down a little bit. For character, it gets a 1. There's nothing incredibly special about this lens. It is pretty sharp. I'm not going to say it's a 3 sharp, but it's definitely a 2 sharp. It has good color rendition, right? But there's just nothing spectacular about this lens. It's a great kit lens for a crop sensor. So 2, 4, 5... divided by 3 is 1.67 on the average. Moving on to the 28mm f2.8, I have the SE, but the non-SE is the exact same, and it's actually a little bit cheaper, but I'm just going off of the one that I have. So price versus performance, it's a 3. This lens is awesome. It's very sharp. Surprisingly few issues with it, right? There's not a whole lot of like distortion or anything like that. Price versus construction, I'm going to give it a 2. It just feels okay. But the price brings it up. Doesn't feel cheap. It just doesn't feel particularly well made, but for its price, it's pretty good. For versatility, I have to give it a 1. It's a 28mm prime, and I don't find 28mm to be super useful. And f2.8 is not particularly wide. It's still a great lens. For character, I'll give this a 2. It's got a little bit of character in that it looks pretty awesome in black and white, although not as good as ones that we will get to. Sharpness. I have to give this a 2. It's not screamingly sharp, but it's nice and sharp. Absolutely perfect for street photography. Okay, so we have 2, 4, 5. That's another 1.67 in image quality average. Okay, the 40mm f2. If you've been watching the channel, you know I love this lens. Current price, $279.95. Price versus performance, it gets a 3. Price versus construction, 2. I feel like it's perfectly appropriate. Okay, it's not for the construction. It's still a plastic mount, but the price is appropriate for the construction. But the performance, it's undervalued on the performance. So versatility, I'm actually going to give this a 2. It doesn't zoom, but it's got a nice aperture, and 40mm is really nice for a lot of things. You can get away with some scenic portraits and some up close portraits, a little bit. It's great for street photography. The character, I'm going to give it a 2 because it has some character to it. And it does look great in black and white, but not a ton of character. So sharpness, I'm going to give it a 2. It is sharp, but there's a lot of sharper stuff out there. So 2, 4, 6 divided by 3 gives us 2 points on the image quality overall. Moving on to the 24-70 f2.8s. Right now it's $23.99.95, and that's a shame because I bought mine for $19.96, and the price has gone up a lot on this. And so price versus performance, this is tough because the performance, I mean, it's worth every dime. I feel like I have to give this a hesitant 3. With the recent price increase, it makes it a little bit harder because it's just that performance is just that much further out of reach. So I don't want to give that one a 3. It would be a high mid to high 2, I feel like, but I'm not doing point somethings. We're not doing decimals here. So price versus construction, I will give that a gosh, what do I want to give that? I have to give it a 3. It feels heavy. No, I have to give it a 2. I'm sorry, because it's an external zoom. If it was an internal zoom, I would give it a 3. Versatility, it gets a 3. Constant f2. The 24-70, it's a nice zoom range. For character, I will give this a... Gosh, do I want to give it a... I'll give it a 2 because it does have a little bit of character. It has a particular look to it. Depending on the lighting, it ranges from dreamy to juicy, but it's not really juicy. Robust, I don't know. It just has a little bit of a something to it. For sharpness, it gets a 3. It's stupidly sharp. The 24-70 f2.8s is as sharp as any prime predecessor. The only primes that can get sharper than the 24-70 f2.8s are Z primes, specifically the 50mm f1.8, the 50mm f1.2. Once you get to about f2, it's really wild how sharp that zoom is. For image quality, see we have a 3, 6, 7, 8 divided by 3. That gives us 2.67 points on the image quality. And actually, this will get a point for over my dead body. Until this lens gets replaced by a version 2, I will never get rid of this lens. Okay, it's just way too useful. The 24-200 f4.63. That's a mess up. This should have been in the last video. I didn't notice until I was editing this. I do not own this lens. I rented this lens and I absolutely hated it. Enjoy the rest of the video. If you saw this video, you know I hate this dang lens. I have to go off of my opinion. There is a chance that this lens was just kind of a dud because it was a rental that I borrowed from Borrowed Lenses, who is not a sponsor, but I like their service. It could have been a dud. But I have a hard time believing that because Borrowed Lenses takes really good care of their lenses and they check everything before and after things get sent out and returned. So price versus performance, I'm going to give it a 1 because I think the performance sucked. Okay, it gets a point for versatility. In fact, I'll give it a 2 because it's a super... Netflix just shut down. I'll give it a 2 as much as I hate this lens and I'd love to be biased and just give it a 1 across the board, because it's a super versatile zoom, the f4.63 does hold us back. See, that's what I've said about other ones. So we'll leave that at 2. But the price versus performance, yeah, no, that lens sucks. It's slow. The f4.63 is just it holds you back. And it's slow, and it's just all those things combined. It's a 1. Price versus construction, I'm gonna give it a 1 because that lens, I don't think it feels very good in the hands. It feels like a toy. It feels really crappy to me compared to everything else, right? You got to have something to compare it to, and that's literally everything else. Character, there's no character. The images don't even particularly, it's the only Z lens, okay? And you've heard me say this if you watched my review. It's the only lens that I feel like truly sucks, right? It's flat like most of the other lenses, plus a little bit more. It's got like a gray quality to it. It's just super flat. It's super flat. Sharpness, I'm going to give it I gotta give it a 1. It's probably the most unsharp lens in the Nikon Z lineup. And I'm trying to be as honest, but as nice as I possibly can here. And so, sorry for anybody that likes that lens, but I hate that lens. I've used all these other lenses, and that's the worst one in the Z lineup. It's way overpriced. You knock this down to $500, then maybe I could do a little something else for it, but it all goes back to that. Okay, image quality, we have 2, 3, 4 points divided by 3, and we have a very low score of 1.33. Moving on to the 50mm f1.2s. Price versus performance. I have to give this a 2, and I know that I may seem incredibly biased towards this lens, but the reason it's a 2 and not a 3, which is what it'd be if I'm biased. Now you know I'm being honest because it's my favorite lens pretty much of all time, is it's kind of slow at focusing. It performs really well, but it has some noise focusing. I don't care about that, but you might, and I'm trying to think about everybody here. It's a little bit slow, but it is very accurate at f1.2. Which is kind of amazing, but I'm going to give it a 2. I think that's fair. Feels a little bit faster. That's the only thing. Price versus construction. I kind of feel like I have to give this a 3 because even though it's hard, heavy plastic, it feels really tough. Okay. It feels really tough. And I feel like some really good materials went into it. They managed to construct the lens with a crap load of glass in it that still has insane character. It has the most character in all of the Nikon Z glass. Okay, that's why I skipped this one. That is why the construction is worth it. It's because Nikon found a way, whether it be from coatings or elements within the lens, to take a crap load of glass and make it look like it's a 4, 5, 6 element count lens. It just oozes juiciness. Versatility. Now, I want to give this a 2, but I kind of have to give it a 3 because you have no idea how useful f1.2 is until you use f1.2. And not only do you get a ton of light with f1.2, but this is also sharp at f1.2. When you get really close for shallow depth of field, you lose some of that sharpness, but you back up to a normal kind of portrait distance, it's insanely sharp at f1.2. I don't know how they did it. And so versatility, it's not a zoom, but a zoom at f2.8 would be worth 3. And so you have a prime 50mm, which is the perfect human eye length, which is versatile. A 50mm will do anything from portraits to some landscapes to street photography. It just does it all. And it's a f1.2. It gets a 3. Sorry. For sharpness, I actually want to give this a 3 as well because at f1.2, again, I don't know how they did it, but it's sharp at a distance, and you get this thing to like f2 and f2.8. It's stupidly sharp. It's one of the sharpest lenses I've ever used, with the exception of some old maybe Zeiss lenses when you nail manual focus. This is at autofocus, okay? It's sickeningly sharp at the right aperture. Okay, so overall image quality, we have 3, 6, 9 divided by 3 gives us 3 points, and this actually gets an over my dead body point. I will never get rid of this lens. You guys knew that was coming. It's my favorite lens of all time. The MC 50mm f2.8. This is not an S-line lens. Its current price is $649.95. Price versus performance, I'm going to give this a 2. It's appropriately priced. It's a pretty versatile lens. Let's go ahead and knock that out. I'm going to give it a 3 for versatility because it actually focuses really close. Now, granted, it's a macro lens, but I mean, I'm talking really close. Price versus construction, I feel like it's appropriately priced for its construction. For its character, I'm going to give it a, let's see, how do I compare this? I'm going to give it a 1. It doesn't have any particular character. For sharpness, I will give it a, does it deserve a 3? I'm going to give it a 2. I want to mention versatility real quick. This lens does everything that the 50mm 1.8 and 1.2 does. F2.8 is okay. But this lens does macro, and it will do shallow depth of field. It will do portraits. It'll do everything. And so that's why it gets a 3. If it wasn't a macro lens, I mean, it would be way lower, obviously. Back to image quality here. We got 3, 4, 5, 6. That gives us 2 points. And it does not get an over my dead body. I'm actually going to sell this lens right now. I don't use it that much. Real quick before I move on, I wanted that lens to be a 60mm replacement, which was on the original roadmap, and then they switched it to a 50. We didn't need another 50. And this lens is really versatile. But it didn't strike me like the 60mm f2.8 and f mount did. So I'm just not really thrilled about that lens. It's okay. Moving on to the 70 to 200mm f2.8 S, rounding out the Trinity for $2699.95. $2699.95 at the making of this video. With the recent price increases, I mean, it makes it a little worse for the 70 to 200. But this lens, price versus performance, it's lightning fast. This lens doesn't strike a chord with me. Okay. I was a huge fan of the 70 to 200 G2 by Tamron on F mount, and that lens smoked Nikon, in my opinion, back in the day. And there's nothing to compare to this right now. This lens is very fast. It's very everything. It's anything you could want in a 70 to 200. It just doesn't resonate with me at that price. I don't feel like I'm getting a great value. There's just nothing, I don't know. Price versus construction. At $2,700, I feel like it should be made of metal, especially when Tamron makes their G2s out of metal for like $1,300 in F mount. Now I get it. This is Z mount. This is Nikon's best 70 to 200 ever. I'm just saying at $2,700, it gets a 2, being made of plastic. Versatility, it gets a 3. It's 70 to 200. It's super versatile. Constant f2.8. Character, it gets a 1. This is one of the more flat rendering Z lenses, in my opinion. There's nothing incredibly juicy about the images that it produces. And on sharpness, it does get a 3. It's stupid sharp. And that brings us to the overall of 2.33. This lens also is not getting a over my dead body point because I'm actually considering selling this lens right now. I don't use it that much. I don't do events anymore. I don't do work. I don't do weddings, anything like that. And so the only thing I would use this for would be for like animals and stuff like that. And so I'm actually considering getting another lens, a prime, the 400-4.5 specifically. Moving on to the final lens that I own, the Nikkor Z MC 105 f2.8S for $1,049.95. Price versus performance. This gets a 3. I still feel at $9.99, this lens was way too cheap. At $1049.95, it's still, I feel like it's underpriced for what you get out of it. Let's move on and we'll see what I'm talking about. Price versus construction, it does feel a little bit cheap. Okay, a little bit cheap, a little bit cheaper than some of the other relatively similarly sized lenses. For versatility, it has to get a 3, and I wish I could give this a 4, but I don't have 4 on my point system because this lens does macro. This is the finest macro lens I've ever owned, beating out my previous favorite of the Tokina 100mm macro, which is surprising. This is also an incredible portrait lens, and for whatever reason, the eye tracking combined with the Nikon Z9 is super good. I don't know why it's so much better than some of the other lenses, but this lens auto focuses on eyes really well. So it's a great portrait lens. It's great for macro. It's kind of the perfect for most of the things I do. It's a great lens to walk around with when I can't be in the stuff. 105 is good for that whenever I can't get on stuff, but I'm not super far away. This lens just does a lot of things, so it gets a 3. For character, I'm actually going to give this a 2. It has some really nice, noticeable characteristics compared to the other Z lenses. It's less flat. It's got some more micro contrast than any of the others, and it looks great in black and white. I have tons of images on my wall from this lens as living proof that, in fact, I want to give this a 3. It's got great character. Moving on to sharpness, obviously it gets a 3. We have a 3, 6, 9 that gives us the average of 3. Now we just need to rearrange these and see who wins. Wait, over my dead body? Yes, it gets an over my dead body point. I'm actually going to do first place last because we have a tie. In last place with 7.33 points, the 24-200. Who'd have thunk? What's really crazy is at 899.95, it is in last place by 2.3 points. Coming in second to last is the DX 16-50 f 3.563. That's not a fair comparison to the other lenses because this is a kit DX lens compared to, some top tier full frame lenses, but I just think it's funny that for $309 it beat the $900 24-20 in performance and value. Coming up in 8th place, we have the 28mm f2.8 SE with 11.67 points, which is impressive compared to the other lenses that we are coming up to in a second. The MC 50mm f2.8 is 7th place with 12 points. The 40mm f2 is in 6th place with 13 points. The 70-200 f2.8S is in 5th place with 13.33 points. The 14-24 f2.8S is in 4th place with 14.33 points. The 24-70 f2.8S is in 3rd with a big jump from 4th place of 17.67 points. See what having character does? Having a little bit of character makes a big difference. So, and also price, because the 14-24 is now $2,500. Now, coming in second and first place, we have the Nikkor MC 105 f2.8S and the 50mm f1.2S. Let's break this down a little bit. The MC price versus performance is that's what really makes this lens absolutely top tier in the Z lineup. You're getting so much for, $1,050. It was more insane at $999. And for the 50mm f1.2S, it's just so juicy. There's something magical about it. I was expecting the 50mm f1.2 to win this, but based on the point system that I came up with, it's a tie. Now, what's interesting about this tie for first place at 19 points is you guys know what kind of photography I generally shoot, okay? 80% of the time, it's portraits. Most of the time now, if I take out the Z9 by itself, or if I take 2 cameras, I always take the 50mm f1.2 and the Nikkor Z MC 105. Those are always in my bag. If I take 2 cameras, those are the only 2 lenses I feel like I need to take. Like if I don't want to carry a lot of stuff, it's always those lenses. They are always in my bag. Everything else gets switched out. But those 2 tied for first place. Well, whether it's a point system or not, or just what I feel and what I've used, it all lines up over here. Now tell me in the comments whether you agree with all this or not, or what your favorites are or least favorites, and we'll see you later.